we go! Here we go! Here we go!
We're gonna have a fiery Sterling today.
Well, no, you just have a big old air horn, and anytime a Packers fan tries to talk, you just hit the button and drown them out. Like, no, I can't hear you. Go Bears.
It's basically the la 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 la.
Yeah, exactly. Right? You don't even have to live there. You can do it from here. Just remote control everything. Yeah, I'm pissed off, man. Fuck the NFL at this point.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the OneIQ Football Talk podcast. Sterling, Brendan coming at you. Yet another week of football discussions. This particular week comes right after trade deadline, and we have a few trades to ultimately talk about and discuss. But first off, Sterling, my buddy, how you doing today?
Oh, we're doing good over here, man. It's, great bye week for me. I enjoyed the trade deadline. Going into that heavy stretch for my Pittsburgh Steelers coming up here, right before we get to that gauntlet in December. I'm happy, I'm having fun, but I'm starting to get a little stressed because now is when the real season starts for my teams. So
This is when shit actually starts to matter. But
yeah.
Reason that I asked is because you and I are likely going to get heated later down this episode, so please make sure to stick around for that. Obviously, if you saw the title of this video, you will hear that a little bit later, and that's where we'll get heated. So, but first off, we're going to talk about all of the trades that were made right around trade deadline, so either the day before or the day of trade deadline. The first move where the Broncos traded away Baron Browning to the Cardinals. The Cardinals getting some edge rushing help again. This is a team that has been one of the worst sack producing teams in the NFL. They end up going out there and getting some more sack production, and if they can just continue to add to that team, that'll be pretty big for them.
Yeah, a lot of good, like, mid-level minor moves for a lot of teams that are just sort of, they're on the rise right now. Both of those teams are in good positions, and that was a trade that really benefited them both.
Yeah, the Texans traded away defensive tackle Khalil Davis to the 49ers to help allow them to shore up some of their defensive line struggles that have ultimately kind of been there from the interior side of things. Again, not necessarily a massive move similar to Browning, just kind of one of those moves that's just going to kind of help out. We're going to quickly kind of jump through some of those similar type moves. Tre'Davious White, he ends up going over to the Ravens, so trade from the Rams to the Ravens. Ravens really just need some more of that secondary help, and Tre'Davious White, his first few years in the league with Buffalo, he was an unbelievably talented corner. Starting to show his age a little bit more, but the Ravens pretty much just did that to just try to help any way they can. And then the Bengals traded for running back Khalil Herbert. Wasn't being used in Chicago. First play of the game on Thursday night for Khalil Herbert, fumbles the ball, so but the Bengals really only spent a 7th round pick on him, and he only had 2 days in training camp or camp with them, so you can't really judge him off of that in that particular game. But some of the more interesting moves, and I want to talk about your Pittsburgh Steelers, because we knew they were going to make a move for a wide receiver, but they also made 2 moves here. They traded for Mike Williams. I think they gave up a 7th round pick for Mike.
I think it was a 5th. It was a 5th for
Mike Williams, but still pretty good value. It was Preston Smith, the edge rusher from the Packers, that they gave up a 7th round pick for. And yes, I want to talk and touch on Mike Williams a little bit more. We've been talking about this move so much that we knew it was pretty much going to happen. You're just solidifying that wide receiver room just that little bit more. Is Mike Williams a needle mover? No. But you don't really need him to be that needle mover. He's a big body receiver that can go up there and get it, which, I think that's kind of why the Steelers were hoping for someone a little bit different, because George Pickens big body that goes up and gets those 50-50 balls. Mike Williams comes in with that experience. We've talked about this trade for weeks upon weeks. The trade that I really want to talk about is the one where they end up getting Preston Smith.
Yeah, no, that was an excellent trade as well, because there were two key issues we were really seeing on this team outside of the injuries on the offensive line. That was something you couldn't really do much with. But like Mike Williams, that shores up that wide receiver question mark. And Preston Smith, yeah, we have one of the best edge rushing duos in the league. We have one of the best front sevens in the league. But the problem that we've been having is the depth there. We've seen Alex Highsmith with an injury, a groin injury this year. We've seen Nick Herbig out the last few weeks with an ankle injury. It really was a point of concern that the edge rushing needed more depth. And adding Preston Smith to this room is just phenomenal, because he's the type of guy, he can fill in for TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith in that edge rushing outside linebacker spot, but he can also play on either one of those defensive end spots alongside Cam Hayward and Keanu Benton. And so the versatility is just immense. The fact that you can plug him in anywhere and add another game wrecking, quarterback rusher to that mix, it just makes this defense so much scarier. That was a phenomenal pickup for a small amount to pay for him. And Preston Smith said he wanted out of Green Bay. I didn't see the reason. I think he just wasn't really
He
enjoying
hadn't
playing
really
there
been
anymore,
utilized as much. He wasn't a
right?
starter. He was a rotational
And
guy, and
granted, he's coming to a Pittsburgh Steelers team where he's likely still not going to be a starter. But because this team is in such a position right now with their record and with the schedule going forward, he's going to have the opportunity to play a lot, because I think the coaching staff and the training room, they're going to be looking at this going, we need to preserve TJ Watt. We need to preserve Alex Highsmith. And so, TJ, you're not playing every snap of the game. I don't care if you want to. You need to think of this in terms of, we want to win a championship. You can't be hurt in the wild card playoff round if we're winning a championship. It just can't happen. And so you need to relinquish some of these snaps to Nick Herbig and to Preston Smith now. And it's just going to it's going to make things so interesting, especially with the fact we saw it before the bye week. Terrell Austin finally did what I've been begging for this team to do. They moved TJ Watt. He wasn't just on that left side rushing. He moved over to where Alex Highsmith was. They swapped spots. What happened? Alex Highsmith got to the quarterback for a sack on that very play. And I was like, yes, more, please. Move TJ Watt everywhere on that line. Use him like Myles Garrett. That's what you need to do, because teams have been scheming and going, we're just going to put a tight end there. We're going to have two guys on that side of the line every single play of the game, and he's going to get double teamed all the time. What happens when you move him to the other side? That team goes, shit, okay, we have to shift over this way, and then you've got Alex Highsmith coming off that edge, and it doesn't matter. Teams are screwed if Terrell Austin continues making those moves.
yeah, what 100%. I looked at this and I went, this move is solely to basically say to TJ Watt, we know you want to play, sit the fuck down for a play or two. We can't have you be hurt. We know the stat when TJ Watt is out there versus when he's not out there. And when the Steelers have him playing in a game, they typically win. When they don't, they typically lose. And we know these Watt brothers. Once they start to get a little bit up there in age, because I think TJ is 28 years old.
Yeah.
This is kind of around the time that we saw JJ start to turn a little bit more to paper mache, where he was a little bit of a glass cannon of he's going to be one of the very best defenders in the entire NFL. But dear God, that if there's an injury that creeps up, it's going to be pretty difficult to deal with. And this is basically just the Steelers organization looking at TJ sitting down and going, listen, break, settle down, take some oxygen. And that's only going to help them.
It is. And I think he'll be on board for that too, because I'm sure they sat him down and they were like, look, you've been here for how long? You haven't won a playoff game. Don't you want to win a playoff game? For us to win a playoff game, you have to be healthy when we play that game. You need to be the starter in that game. And so often, by the time we reach week 15, he's hurt, he's dealing with a nagging injury, or he's done for the season.
Yeah.
And this year, we've got that 10-game stretch. Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs. It would not be a terrible idea to just sit Watt entirely for one of those. Have him be a healthy scratch if you need to, or just have him not be the starter. Be like, no, you're going to come in on those key third downs, but you're not playing the rest of the game. We're using Preston Smith. We're using Nick Herbig. Like T.J. Watt has basically had a shadow named Nick Herbig all season long. Herbig has been Watt's been teaching him all of his swim moves, all of his power moves. Like he's been soaking all of this up like a sponge, and you see it when he's out there. He kind of is a TJ Watt Jr. That's the way he wrecks these games. He's got that same explosiveness. Like this could be great things for the Steelers going forward. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Pittsburgh Steelers later once we're into just talking about our teams and give my real hot take on what this team could be.
You've just been
But
teasing me
this
with that
was
hot take, my friend. You've been just tickling the balls with that hot take that you won't tell me.
yeah.
But yeah, no,
They are
I fully agree with you. Again, the Mike Williams one, we've been calling that one what feels like since week 5 at this point, and Preston Smith only helped. The big trade of the week, I would say, has to go to the Washington Commanders, where they said, we are looking at the New Orleans Saints. They're in full rebuild mode. We are taking Marshawn Lattimore, one of the premier corners in the league. I'm not going to say he's top 5 because I don't think he's top 5 anymore, but he's still a top 10 corner in the NFL. And we know this Commanders team, one of their biggest areas of weakness on that defense is the cornerback position. And you get a very, very clear, talented guy there. He's not going to be playing this week. That's already been announced, but this is going to be a big trade. This is a big move for the Commanders to get an established guy there, because again, they have a lot of young secondary guys back there, and you need that true alpha back there to just kind of settle everyone down. Now, do I still think this makes this Commanders defense great? No, it without a doubt improves it, but this is just overall a very, very good move for the Commanders.
100%. This team they love cornerbacks, don't they? We made fun of them 2 years ago when they had their draft, the draft before Jaden Daniels, when they took cornerback to start the draft, and we were laughing at them because they didn't even get the best cornerbacks out of it. Obviously, since they had to trade for somebody to bring in to be their number one.
Yeah.
Like, you take a corner in the first round,
You're
you
expecting
got to
him to be your
expect
number
he's
one
going
guy.
to be your number one guy. And they just fumbled that so horribly.
It's so bad.
But
bad.
this was a great move by a Commanders team that I think they've even surprised themselves. They weren't expecting to be sitting at 7-2, going up against Pittsburgh in week 10 with their bye week coming up next week, going, we're leading our division. We need to figure out this defense because our offense is rolling, but our defense keeps letting teams hang around. So this was a great move by them. And all they can hope for is that, maybe Bobby Wagner just finds that old swagger he had and starts doing a little bit more in the middle of the field. This Commanders team could surprise some people. And like I said a few weeks back, they're starting to feel a little bit like the Houston Texans of last season, where they're going to be a surprise entrant into the playoffs. They might surprise a team and win a playoff game. It's interesting to see what Washington is doing right now.
It really is. But the other big trade that we saw this week, and we have 2 more trades that we're going to talk about, but the other big one was Zadarius Smith going from the Browns to the Lions. Now, we knew the Lions were in contact with the Browns for both Zadarius Smith and Myles Garrett, but we kind of felt that it was likely going to be Zadarius Smith. This one is pretty much 100% just saying we are finding a very good edge rusher to kind of step into the role for Aiden Hutchinson while he's out this year, and he's also going to be around for at least next year as well to give them a really, really powerful 1-2. Again, just we knew this move was coming, that the
Yeah.
Lions were going to go get an edge rusher to replace Hutchinson to just kind of help that defense out, because they really need that top tier edge rusher. And again, just a absolutely phenomenal move here by the Lions.
Yeah, it didn't surprise anybody. I mean, I know there were rumors too, is it going to be Myles Garrett? Is it going to be Max Crosby? I don't think any of us truly believed either of those guys were on the move. Those are your franchise linchpin guys on your defense. Neither of those guys were moving at the deadline, if we're being real about it.
Yeah,
So Zadarius
if
Smith
you're gonna see
made more
those guys
sense.
ever get moved, it'll be
No.
during the offseason. Even then, it
Well,
would have to
and
be.
it'll only be at their request, really, I
Yes,
think, because
yes.
both of them have stated we want to stay with our team. And I think it would be, you're just going to alienate yourself from your fan base by moving on from a guy that wants to play for your garbage organization. Keep the guys that want to play there, because you're not going to
Exactly.
find many of them.
Exactly. That is 100%
Yeah.
a very true statement there. But yeah, Zadarius Smith going to the Lions, big move. But the one that you and I kind of talked a little bit about in the game prediction video on Saturday is Cowboys trading for Jonathan Mingo. Jonathan Mingo, again, he was a second round pick, not in this year's class, but last year's. They basically said, oh, we're going to pair Bryce Young with Jonathan Mingo, and it's going to be really, really good. And Jonathan Mingo has been bad. And the Cowboys were like, 4th round pick for him, please and thank you. And the Panthers were like, okay,
Yeah.
we have Adam Thielen, right? Yeah. We don't want the guy that's actually shown that he can do things in the NFL. We want the completely unproven guy that has just been pretty bad his very short 1.5 year career.
Yeah, this was a head scratcher. I work with a couple of Cowboys fans, and when this dropped and I saw them, I was like, so, how are them boys? And they both just hung their heads. They're like, I don't know what's happening over there. And I was like, I do. Jerry Jones is going fucking senile. You paid more for Jonathan Mingo than any other team paid before this trade deadline for so many of the marquee wide receivers out there. We're talking Devontae Adams.
The only
DeAndre
player
Hopkins.
that the team that paid more was for Devontae Adams, but Devontae Adams is a premier wide receiver, though.
Well, he's one of the best, and so like you almost paid as much for Jonathan Mingo as
You
the
did
Jets
for
paid for Devontae Adams. But you
exactly.
got DeAndre Hopkins, Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson, Mike Williams, all these guys that were on the move for less than a fourth, and they've been more productive, and they're going to be more productive. It's just you would have
Absolutely
gotten a
mind-boggling.
better wide receiver keeping your 4th round pick and drafting one in next year's draft with a 4th rounder.
Probably.
You would have gotten a better wide receiver than Jonathan Mingo.
Probably, and we will always shit on the Cowboys, and we will always hate on the Cowboys. We have the teams that we hate the most, but those are just teams that are in our division. But then the second that we leave our division, I'm pretty sure we can comfortably say that we hate the Cowboys the most. I know for years it was probably the Patriots for you, just because they weren't in your division, but we can always say the Cowboys are just easily the most hated team, and we enjoy watching them suffer, because this is just another stupid move that they're continuing to make. But speaking of stupid moves and stupid teams,
The Bears.
I didn't make a Bears video this week, mostly because what was the point? There's no point, and I've already stated last week that I'm not watching the Bears games anymore. If the Bears have Matt Eberflus as a head coach, out of my own protest, I will not be watching Bears games, and I employ Bears fans to stop watching Bears games. Follow it on Twitter for sure. Follow it on ESPN, where they show each play, or they don't show each play, but they have like the little ticker that tells like, oh, Bears got this much of a gain, or the Bears lost in this way, or they did this stupid thing. Just do that. That's what I did, and I was happy. I walked away from a Sunday going, the Bears lost in a terrible fashion, and I was like, huh, I didn't have to watch that garbage. And I just employ every Bears fan, just stop watching them. your life will be so much better. And until Eberflus is gone, just stop. I know this video is going to be coming out on Monday, and so the results of the Patriots Bears game will obviously be finalized, and it will be up, and we will know what happened. I said in our predicts video, I hope the Bears get blown out. I hope they get destroyed in this game. And I hope they lose every other game this year, because you can't have any wiggle room for Ryan Poles to sit back to ownership and say, we need to have Matt Eberflus back. There was wiggle room last year, and it pissed me off that the Bears kept him. I would love to go back and find whatever podcast it was the week that we announced that the Bears were going to keep Matt Eberflus. I was irate. I was just disgusted with this organization going, yeah, sure, he won 5 out of the 7 games to end the year, but that's not good enough. You can't win with him. You go get a Ben Johnson. You go get a Jim Harbaugh to come in with your rookie quarterback, because again, now we're talking about this same situation this Bears organization has been in these last few years, and the simple answer for Ryan Poles is going, well, I came in to break that tradition of badness, but you can't tell me that keeping Eberflus next year is going to solve anything. You're going to dive into and get better offensive linemen, but if you go out there and get a new coordinator, well, guess what? You're forcing Caleb Williams to go down that same route anyways, of going, well, we're going to have a new play call or a new play caller this year. Like, then just fire the fucking head coach. Like, this should not be difficult. I said coming into this year, you need to keep Matt Eberflus for at least 2 years. And I said that under the pretense of going, the team is minimum 8-win team. A minimum of an 8-win team. And I knew there was going to be rough games out there and this, that, and the other thing. But right now, what I'm seeing, you can't convince me that keeping Matt Eberflus as the head coach of this team is going to benefit anyone. And obviously all the rumors of, well, Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles have the same agent. Ryan Poles and both of those guys had the same agent as Luke Getsy. They have the same agent as Shane Waldron, and it's like, oh, this agent is secretly the shadow president of the Chicago Bears. And I go, there's been times where we've seen that before, where agents of coaches and GMs connect team. It's something that we see, but it's not something that you need to follow. And the people that are saying, oh, Matt Eberflus actually has a 5-year contract. Most head coaches have 5-year contracts when they sign as a first-time head coach for that team. It's just, you can't keep this guy around. If you do it, you're only going to be hurting yourself, and it's just going to be that moment of everyone sitting back going, I told you so. We're saying that now.
Exactly. We're already at that point. I mean, we said it before the draft. Like, the Bears need to break the cycle, and to do so, you need to fire Eberflus before you draft that next quarterback. You need to get a new head coach in there that wants that quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's the exact same cycle, because Matt Eberflus should be fired at the end of this year, which means it's the same thing Justin Fields went through. It's the same thing Mitch Trubisky went through. And you just have to hope that somehow doing the same thing over and over results in a different outcome this time. Hopefully. It doesn't happen very often. Usually when you repeat history,
bad things happens. Yeah. Now the one sole thing that I can hang my hat on with this one is that I look at Mitch Trubisky. I was never a fan of Mitch Trubisky. I was raging when that pick happened, and I was a big fan of Justin Fields, but Justin Fields isn't. I don't think you're ever going to win a Super Bowl with Justin Fields. The unfortunate nature of that. It then goes to a situation of, you look at guys like Jared Goff. He survived a year 1 coaching change. Justin Herbert survived that same situation. The true great guys can survive these situations. And I think Caleb Williams is a guy that can survive this situation. I heard a great thing where people are saying that he's bust proof. I do think Caleb Williams is bust proof. We have seen the talent that this guy has. You just need to get him a little bit more help around, and I still think he will be a good quarterback in this league, regardless of situation. Again, he's a rookie quarterback. We always say throw the rookie quarterback year out because it's such an anomaly. You don't really know what you're going to kind of have, whether it's good, whether it's bad. We're looking at CJ Stroud. His rookie year was spectacular. We're kind of looking at this year of going like it's a little bit of a sophomore slump, and it's a little bit of kind of that changeover, and obviously there's more to discuss with that as well. But if the Bears keep Eberflus at the end of the year, that will be the decision of where, if you're in the Chicago area, you drive up to Hallis Hall with signs and you just protest. Like you simply cannot have that. And if Ryan Poles, who I have been a massive fan of when he became the general manager of the Chicago Bears, I think he is the GM that can get this team to a Super Bowl. But if Ryan Poles keeps Matt Eberflus, you have to fire both. It is inexcusable to keep both of them. And again, I will be preaching every single week for the remainder of the year. Bears need to lose, and they need to lose embarrassingly, because you can't have a single thing that Ryan Poles can use to go up to ownership and say, I want to keep him for X. You need to have ownership look at him and go, it's either both of you or him. Make the choice. And it very well might be Ryan Poles saying, you know what, if I can't have my guy, then fire us both, which at that point I'm perfectly okay with. I don't want to look for a new general manager because I think Ryan Poles is doing a great job, with the exception of the goddamn coach.
Yep.
You do not keep lame duck head coaches. We talk about the confetti test. Does he pass the confetti test? Eberflus does not. Right now, he doesn't pass getting to the goddamn playoff test with a playoff caliber team. And if you just continue down this road, you're going to fuck yourself over and over and over. And now, I know a lot of Bears fans. They're kind of tired of being lubed up and just being penetrated like this. And again, it's just one of those things where you have to take this approach of just stop watching the team. If you're going to the game and you've already bought tickets to the game, start chanting fire Flus. Again, I expect the first drive, the Bears are going to go 0-3. There's going to be boos. I don't want the boos. Not because I think, booing the team is wrong or anything. It should just be the chant of fire Flus. Fire Flus. We heard fire Nagy.
Mm-hmm.
We know this fan base can do it. That should be the message. It should be every single home game. Fire Flus chants, even if you're winning. Like, again, the Bears could very easily beat the Patriots, and they could go out there and win 38-0 and go, yep. Everyone just sits back and go, oh, well, that won't mean anything. If you could win 75-0, you could win 100-0. It won't matter. Everyone will just sit back and go, dude, it was the Patriots. It's the special needs kid in the wheelchair that you push down the stairs. And this is kind of the reason why I'm saying I want you to lose. I want you to get embarrassed. At home, we always talk about, Eberflus, the Bears have the longest home winning streak in the NFL right now. And lose. For the love of God, lose. And I hate talking like this because, Sterling, I know you have had to listen to me talk like this way too goddamn often while we've been doing this podcast. This is our 4th year doing this?
Yep. And
you've had to hear me bitch and moan about just lose because it'll ultimately be better for the team.
Well, I mean, it sucks that the Bears curse is real, man. Like, you guys have everything in place. And if it truly is Ryan Poles being the advocate for Matt Eberflus, then you have to fire him. Because I agree, he has done great things as the GM there. He's built a great team outside of the coaching staff. Mm-hmm. Was it Ryan Poles that brought in Matt Eberflus, or did they both get the job at the same time?
So what happened was, and like this was kind of the big thing last year of when we were talking about whether or not Ryan Poles or Matt Eberflus was a Ryan Poles guy. And when the Bears hired Ryan Poles, they had already scheduled meetings for head coaches that they have already talked to. It was Dan Quinn. It was I'm forgetting he was a former Lions head coach for years, and then it was Matt Eberflus. And I looked at all three and I said, I don't want Dan Quinn. I don't want the Lions guy, or Jim Caldwell, that's who it was.
Yeah.
And it was Matt Eberflus. And I said, if I have to choose one of these three guys, I would rather have Eberflus, because I've already discussed and said my thoughts on Dan Quinn, where I think he's just an okay head coach, and I think he's being carried by an elite offensive coordinator. We saw what happened when Kyle Shanahan left him. We're likely going to see the same thing happen when Cliff Kingsbury leaves him. And it's like, again, I don't trust Dan Quinn. I don't like defensive minded head coaches. We all know this. But I looked at that and I was like, if I'm gonna have to choose something, and that's kind of where Ryan Poles was. It was basically, here are your three candidates, and he chose Matt Eberflus, and I was fine with that at the time. And last year I said, we're going to truly see if Matt Eberflus is Ryan Poles' guy. And when he kept him and retained him, it was, okay, you've made your bed. You're like, Matt Eberflus is your guy. There's no doubt about it. He's your guy. You can't say anything more now. And so, yes, to the long-winded answer to your question was, did Ryan Poles bring in Matt Eberflus? Yes. That was his guy and his choice.
Well, I mean, it's going to be a turning point for him, because Eberflus has to go. He is not head coaching material. I've said this so many times. You know, you and I disagree on our head coaching philosophies a little bit, but the thing we agree on is there are a lot of guys
who should
in
not
head
be
coaching
a head coach.
roles that are phenomenal coordinators. They are so good at calling either offense or defense, but they don't have the right mindset and personality to be a head coach. Eberflus is one of those. Great defensive 100%. Mind. You know, Dan Quinn too. Great defensive mind. Not a great head coach, either one of them. You know, and you mentioned Cliff Kingsbury carrying Dan Quinn right now. He's the same on the opposite side of it. He's a great offensive coordinator. If he leaves Washington for another head coaching job, he's going to fall on his face again, because he is not head coach caliber.
Yeah, it's, again, I don't really know what more to say about this other than, if you're a Bears fan and you want change, you have to hope this team loses out. You can't be sitting like, I want the team to still try to do well and try to win. It's going, no, stop it. Stop trying to have that philosophy. Hope they lose, because again, you can't have excuses. You can't have the team allowed to have excuses. They said at the beginning of the year, we are competing this year. They promised us jetpacks. Where's my jetpack?
I mean, that's the unfortunate and scary thing right now, is sitting at 4-4, and you have yet to play a divisional game. So you have 6 key matchups still to come against the Lions, the Vikings, and the Packers. And
you're playing the 49ers and you're playing the Seattle Seahawks as well. So this Patriots game is really the last cupcake game of the year.
It is, but even without any outside of the division games, just within the division, the Bears could shock. They're not going to be the Lions, but they could shock the Vikings. You kind of have to shock the Packers, because at this point, the Packers have owned you guys for 30 years. Like, you need to still find a way to beat the Pack. And it's just, you guys are likely going to end up either 8-9 or 9-8. And the problem with that is, we see coaches stick around when those kinds of records happen, when you've got a rookie quarterback. That's the worst thing. You guys, you need to finish 4-13. That's what needs to happen, you know, or 5-12, 6-11 at the most. If you guys win more than 6 games, I'm worried Eberflus is going to stick around, and it's me too. If you're going to change, you got to change now, and put use to the next 3 years of Caleb Williams' rookie contract before that option year. It's man, that the Bears they're treading water, and they've been treading water for so long, and the Sharks are circling. If this organization ruins Caleb Williams like they've ruined so many quarterbacks before, it's going to reach a point where you guys are going to be drafting, and you're going to go to draft a quarterback, and you're going to get a situation where a guy goes, I don't want to play there. Like the rumors last year where it was Caleb Williams saying, I don't want to be a Bear. That's what's going to start happening, is these quarterbacks are going to be like, I
No,
would
I'm good.
rather go and work at McDonald's
Yeah.
than be a Bears quarterback because you're going to ruin my career.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see it, but that's the path this organization is going down. And I feel for Bears fans.
It is one of the most painful and annoying things to deal with here at the moment, because again, I said it last year, you can't put yourself in the same situation. You look at the Commanders, they aligned their head coach with their rookie quarterback, and it's one of those things. Again, even if the Commanders, you reverse their record of where they were 2-7, the chances are of you firing Dan Quinn this year were low, because it was like, oh, he has a rookie quarterback with a bad team. Now Dan Quinn is likely going to win Coach of the Year. Like, not because of what he is doing, mostly because of what his coordinator's doing. But again, you just look at that and go, these are the differences here. And it's so annoying. And again, I just implore all Bears fans, hope this team loses. Because again, my one saving grace is knowing this team has never fired a head coach in season. If the Bears lose bad enough, you could see Kevin Warren just go above Ryan Poles' head and say, "No, you're done. You're done."
Yeah.
And like that is the only thing giving me hope for this team for the remaining part of the year, of just you lose bad enough to a team this bad in the Patriots. Again, Patriots have beaten the Bengals, they've beaten the Jets. There's no reason they can't beat the Bears. The Bears also have a handful of injuries this week. They don't have 3 of their top tackles. They don't have Darnell Wright, they don't have Braxton Jones, they don't have Kareem Amagaje. They are literally running with their 4th and 5th tackles.
Caleb Williams might die.
Well, it's not like the Patriots have much.
He is terrible.
Yeah.
And Caleb Williams still might die. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, he does. He looks like he's running around for his life back there behind that O-line. It's not been good, man.
And
I feel for you.
Yeah. Let's go on to your hot take for this Pittsburgh Steelers team, because
to brighten things up, on my side of it, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who we start the season and everybody goes, they're going to finish last in their division. They're going to be at the bottom of the league. They're trash. There's quarterback controversy. They have no wide receivers. We're 6-2. Went into the bye. They made a quarterback change after being 4-2, which made a lot of people angry. It put Mike Tomlin right in the spotlight. And yeah, not just you, everybody, even me. I was really questioning it. But with how things have played out thus far, and then you look at what's happened this bye week, 2 big trades for mid-level guys, but such key positions. And then you remember that this Steelers team during this bye week, they got healthy. Nick Herbig is back. Alex Highsmith is completely healthy. Cam Sutton has served his suspension. He is back at the cornerback position. You got Cordarrelle Patterson coming back as well. Zach Frazier, our standout rookie center, is coming back this week also. This team has gotten healthy at the perfectly right time. Running back room is 100% for the first time this year going into this week. This 10-day stretch through the bye, and with this game against the Commanders that has just happened yesterday, if it went the way I think it did, then this 10-day stretch could begin the trajectory for a shock Pittsburgh Steelers Super Bowl bound team with Mike Tomlin winning head coach of the year, because of that decision to switch from a already winning quarterback to a veteran that just improved the offense that much more. You know, I really believe right now Mike Tomlin is a close runner-up to Dan Quinn for coach of the year after that controversial decision has come to fruition and shown everybody why he made that choice, and it was the right choice, obviously. Again, we have to see what happens going forward. We're entering the difficult stage of the schedule. We didn't think this game was going to be part of that, but it is. The Commanders are 7-2. They are a force. They have won against good teams. They have beaten good defenses. That is the place we're in. We weren't expecting the tough stretch to start until next week against Baltimore. Here we are against Washington. It starts now. And so they need to start running with it. I hope this offense continues to improve. I see no reason why it won't. Adding Mike Williams to this, all that does, it takes that pressure off of George Pickens to the point where he's going to have a lot more one-on-one matchups. Yes, Mike Williams is similar. He's just a stretched field kind of guy, but that's the type of quarterback Russell Wilson is too. He's now going to be able to look at it and go, well, with Pat Freiermuth in the middle and Van Jefferson running routes over the middle, it's going to bring the safeties down, which means I've got one-on-one George Pickens and one-on-one Mike Williams. Which side am I airing it out to? That is the most comfortable for Russell Wilson. And the difference we see with him to Justin Fields, it's when the pressure comes, he's able to make that decision and go, I'm dumping it to Jalen Warren. I'm dumping it to Pat Freiermuth. He knows how to hit his check down guys, whereas Justin Fields doesn't. He was taking bad sacks. He was throwing the ball away or scrambling away. Russell Wilson isn't doing that. He's seeing the field better. He's got that vision. He's finding an open receiver when his 50-50 balls aren't there. This offense has the opportunity to continue rolling and getting better. This is the first time we've seen them score 30-plus points back-to-back since 2020. This is the best start that this team has had since 2020. It's been a long time. I think if they're able to keep this ability going and they win some of these tough games coming up, we could see the Steelers finally break this streak of losing in the first round of the playoffs. We'll finally break that discussion of, are the Pittsburgh Steelers becoming the next Dallas Cowboys? Or for you hockey fans out there, are the Pittsburgh Steelers becoming the Toronto Maple Leafs? Where they're great during the regular season, and then they just completely shit the bed when the playoffs roll around. I think this team actually has the capabilities and the makeup to do that for the first time in a long time. You know, Arthur Smith, he had some tough sledding in the early going where he was playing his little rinky-dink decoy football, but with the running back room being hurt, he was sort of forced to use Najee Harris the way you need to use Najee Harris, and went, oh shit, this dude can run over 100 yards a game every fucking game. And that's what he's been doing. And even with Patterson and Warren fully healthy, you need to still do that. Najee Harris needs to be handed the rock early. You need to let him hit somebody. Let him run someone over, because as soon as he does, that opens up the offense completely. Because as soon as he runs over a guy, the defense goes, shit, we have to send 2 on Najee Harris every time, which, again, limits how much you can double team George Pickens. This offense could start rolling and doing great things. And all I've talked about is the offense. The defense got so much better. Like I said, Cam Sutton, Preston Smith, Nick Herbig, who's TJ Watt Jr. basically when he's out there. This defense is already number 1, and I think they are going to just put their stamp on that and go, nobody's going to take this position from us the rest of the year. Barring, of course, as always with any team, barring injuries. If we start see injuries stack up, that changes it completely. But if we're looking at a completely healthy Pittsburgh Steelers team down the stretch, I believe they need to be considered as one of the top 3 AFC teams alongside the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens to be going to that AFC championship. And yes, that includes ahead of the Buffalo Bills, because while the Buffalo Bills have a great offense, they don't have that defense too. The Steelers have a great offense a great defense, and the offense is building their way to arguably be one of the better offenses in this conference right now. If they can keep going the way they're going, keep scoring points, keep moving the ball. I didn't think I'd be talking about Pittsburgh as being a top 5 team or a top 3 in their conference this season, but here we are. I think they need to be considered in both of those roles. Top 5 in the league, top 3 in the AFC.
You already know what I'm going to say here at
I
this
know. I
point.
know you
And
disagree.
no, I'm not saying I disagree. I am saying at this moment what I've been saying the last few weeks. I'm not going to praise the Steelers offense. I'm not going
Yep.
to discourage the Steelers offense or talk negatively about them. Again, because right here at this current moment, I do not believe what we've seen from Russell Wilson up against the talent that we've seen him go up against in the Jets when they were kind of in that just shell-shocked injured state, and the Giants defense is proof that this offense has taken another corner. Now, going up against the Commanders, like I said, I don't necessarily believe that the Commanders have a great defense. So that is also not a great litmus test. The Ravens don't really have that great of a defense either. You look at the Browns, they are just an absolute mess. The Bengals have a terrible, terrible defense. The Eagles are an absolute mess with Nick Sirianni. Now, granted, their players and team are playing really, really well. Again, we're talking about the Bengals and Browns having to be played twice, and same thing with the Chiefs. But you're going up against the Chiefs. That is a team with a real, real defense. And again, you can only play the teams that you're scheduled to play. And for the Steelers at this moment, I would say hold a little bit of I'm not going to say worry, and I'm not going to say optimism, but skepticism with this offense the way that it is, because over these next 8 games for the remainder of the year, you're going up against only one considerable good defense. Now, the Ravens, their defense at any given week could be either really good or really bad. You don't know what you're going to get. And we always talk about this AFC North. When teams play against each other, it is kind of any team's matchup. Like, any team can win any given game. And so for me, like I said, even going into this stretch of where you're going to have to play the Browns, or you're going to have to play the Eagles, the Ravens, and the Chiefs over that 10-day stretch, I just continue to look at it and go, your offense is without a doubt improving. I will say that. But again, you're going up against an Eagles team that is dysfunctional with its head coach. You're going up against a Ravens team that, let's be honest, their defense isn't the defense of last year. The Browns don't have that same level of defense. I just go, once you get to the playoffs, that's when we're going to start to see who some of the real defenses are. And no, I'm just going to just take a look here at the current standings for the playoffs here.
That's exactly what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah, at the moment. Like, let's say if it ended today, the Steelers would be third, so they would likely have to go up against the Chargers. Chargers, we've already seen those two teams play each other. And so to me, honestly, I can see that game being a toss-up. I can see that game being a toss-up. The Broncos, I think the Broncos are still probably a little too early. And, the Texans, if the Texans start to get healthy closer to the end of the year, that's a real defense right there. That's a real defense. And if the Steelers have to play the Texans, I'm sorry, I'm picking the Texans in that game. I trust the Texans defense, and I trust the Texans offense more than I trust the Steelers offense in that particular game. And so again, like I said, I'm not going to disagree with anything that you've said. No. The situation that I'm saying is go over these next stretch, and I think for the Steelers, their offense is going to look half decent in some of these games, mainly for the reasons that I've stated before. I don't think the defenses that they're going to go up against are necessarily elite defenses and some of the top things. So I'm just saying, I agree with everything that you're saying. It's just have that little bit of skepticism going into the playoffs, because that is when you're likely going to face a better one. But again, you could go out there and face the Ravens in the wild card round. There's just so much right now that I look at, I go to maybe, I wouldn't maybe necessarily say favorite for an AFC championship game. I would just say if you make it past the wild card round, was you have to Like, you're going to be a wild card team. That's just the ultimate result of it. But once you get into that scenario, it's going to be okay. Who are the matchups? And I'll say this for the rest of the year, and I will continue to say this. I'm not going to speak positively about that offense, and I'm not going to speak negatively about it, because they're going to go up against some good defenses, but they're not going to be going up against great defenses or even elite defenses until we see the Chiefs. And until we get to that point, it's just going to be me going, yep, they're doing what they need to do to win, and they have the best defense in the NFL, so I will give them that. And again, I'm not going to disagree with you. I know every point that you made, very, very stellar. The only thing that I want to add is just have that little bit of skepticism.
Well, and what I'll say is, I do everything I said there in that take, like that is how I see it, the team. But it still stands, just like I've said from week one. No matter what happens at any point in this season, we could be sitting at 8-0 right now. All that matters is that 10-game stretch in December.
10-day stretch,
that is the key. Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, all in 10 days. This team has to win 2 of those 3.
Yes.
They do that, and that just, everything I've said here, that puts a stamp on it, and they go, yes, this team is one of the favorites to go to the AFC Championship at that point.
I agree with you.
That's been what I've been saying this whole year. And that was with the lackluster offense that we were seeing already.
Yes.
And so now that's all I'm saying is this offense has
No, like
better.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And again, everything that you stated, I 100% agree with you. And I just wanted to throw that little caveat in there of, like, these are the teams and the defenses that you're going up against. And 100%. So for me, I everything that you say, I have to agree with. If I were to disagree with you, you need to come over to my house, punch me in the dick several times, and go, really? But
no, I'm just letting you know. Like, I'm not saying all this stuff without that skepticism already there. That is still there. It's that 10-day stretch in December that is going to decide whether this team can win a playoff game or whether they lose in the wild card again.
Yep.
It's simple as that. You know,
and we've been talking about that for months now.
Exactly. That's the way once the schedule came out, that was the case. No matter who the quarterback was, no matter what happened to this team, that was the case. Because we knew this team, being what they are with the defense, they were going to be a wild card team. Yes. We were expecting at the start of the year probably 6th or 7th seed, whereas now we're looking at them potentially being the 2 or 3 seed instead. Which is
they're likely going to get a home playoff game.
Exactly, which is a very different thing. And as you said, though, like, they don't have to go up against a tough defense. You got the Bengals, you got the Browns, you got the Ravens, you got the Eagles, who have good talent but poor management and poor coaching. The Chiefs are the only real test until you get to the playoffs. But as we said, the playoff picture right now, it's a Broncos team that the Steelers have already beat without a great defense. A Chargers team with a good defense that's banged up that the Steelers have already beat. With Ravens, like, it's all the teams that they're already playing and already have beaten outside of the Texans and the Bills. But the Bills, too, do not have a great defense.
Yep.
And so that's why I'm saying right now they are trending in that right direction for sure for this team. You know,
100%. 100%. Have to agree with you.
And it's satisfying for me because every year, every goddamn year, everybody goes, the Steelers are going to finish 4th in the AFC North. The Browns are better. The Bengals are better. Honestly, the Bengals have a great offense. The Ravens have a great offense. But the same thing can be said about both of those teams. They haven't gone up a lot against a lot of great defenses.
100%.
Chiefs, who they both lost to.
Yep.
And so that's what it comes down to is when we have these division games, really it's what I'm most excited to see is, can Joey Porter Jr. stop Jamar Chase? Can Patrick Queen and TJ Watt stop Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson?
Yep. No,
those are the big things.
These are going to be massive litmus tests, and this stretch of the season for the Pittsburgh Steelers is going to simply determine whether or not we're just going to see the same old Steelers or we could see something different.
Well, that's just it. It's either going to be same old Steelers, or we could be witnessing something that is just some of the best football we've seen in years. If this Steelers team starts running this gauntlet and winning these games and winning them in dominant, decided fashion. You know, like if this Commanders game that happened, if it finished with like a 23-21 final or something and it was close and it was gritty, that's when you go, okay, they only barely got past the Commanders. How are they going to do against the Ravens next week? It'll be a 1 or 2 point game against the Ravens,
as we see it all the time.
It'll always be that way.
And this is why we just basically say every single week this season, once we get into this stretch, it's going to be a week by week basis. Like, it is. And until we get to the final game of the season where they go up against the Cincinnati Bengals, because here's the thing, the Steelers could win all of these games by 1 point, and the final game of the season they could lose to the Bengals in bad fashion where they still have all their players, and it could be easily a situation of going, dude, your team won by 1 point in all of these games, and it was close, it was gritty. You can't have that in when it comes time to playoff. You need to be able to have a little bit more of these comfortable victories. We just don't know right now. We just don't know, and that's the situation. And you and I are in the exact same spot right now looking at the Steelers team.
Exactly. Yeah, and you're not going to have any comfortable victories from here till the end of the season. It's simple as that, because you're playing either all good teams or, in one case, a division rival that always plays you hard even when they're trash, and that's the Cleveland Browns. And so that's just it. We saw good, dominant wins over the Jets and the Giants, which are mediocre teams. I said it
those
when
are the
I did
teams
my
you
game
need to have those wins against.
Exactly. Those were games over the last 3 years that the Steelers win.
Have those gritty wins.
2 points on a TJ Watt fumble and field goal to win the game. You know, that's how they used to win those games. This year, they won them by just decimating those teams. Yeah. And that is a great thing to see, because now maybe they can hang with the Ravens. Maybe they can hang with the Chiefs. I can't wait to see. Whereas at the beginning of the season, I was like, I don't want to watch football between December 15th and December 25th. And now I'm looking at it going, it's going to be good fucking football. Even if my team loses, those are going to be some good games. I just hope to God on Christmas Day, if the Chiefs beat the Steelers, it is not the refs that beat the Steelers. That is my only hope.
We won't know, but we have been agreeing a little too much. And at the start of the podcast, we talked about there's going to be a little bit of a massive disagreement that we have in this one. And obviously you've seen the title of this video. We are doing our mid-season awards, essentially, not necessarily who we think if the season ended today. Well, I guess we're kind of doing that, but it's one of those things where we are pretty much lockstep in all of our award predictions, with the exception of one, and we are going to disagree heavily on that, and we're going to get some feistiness out of here. We love each other, and like this is healthy discourse, but we're going to continue a little bit of agreements here over the next probably about 5-10 minutes, and then because
we discussed all these awards, and really everything that you said I fully agreed with for all these awards, from Offensive Player of the Year all the way down to Coach of the Year. And so we're going to go through the ones that we agreed on before we get to this last one, where it's going to get interesting.
It's going to be interesting. So let's start with Offensive Rookie of the Year. It's pretty clear at this point who it's going to be, unless something insane happens of where this guy gets hurt or one player just completely picks up his play. It's going to be Jaden Daniels, quarterback for the Washington Commanders. He single-handedly has turned this team into a much different team. Now, again, I have been saying all year long, this is the Cliff Kingsbury effect. It's not the Jaden Daniels or the Dan Quinn effect. It is Cliff Kingsbury coming in and saying, Jaden Daniels is a talented quarterback. He went second overall for a reason. And
Yep.
right now, he's going to win this award. And I don't think anyone would argue with that. It's without a doubt very comfortable that that's going to be the case unless he gets injured. And even then, he still might walk away with the award. But right now, Jaden Daniels is the clear runaway offensive rookie of the year.
100% he is. Yeah, everything he's done, he's putting up RG3 level numbers. You see their stats side by side. He's done great things. And yeah, it's Cliff Kingsbury, but we talk all the time about how important coaching is for all your players,
Yes.
especially young rookies.
Yes. And that one has been proven to be fairly big. Now, our defensive rookie of the year, this is one of those ones where we didn't have a class of defensive players coming in this year where you went, there's an easy favorite to kind of lock onto. And it's kind of just been a defensive class by committee, but both of us looked at Quinyon Mitchell as the corner for the Philadelphia Eagles. He has been pretty shut down this year. I think he has been phenomenal. You could easily make the case for Jared Verse or Brandon Fisk, both the defensive linemen for the Rams, but with Quinyon Mitchell, he has just simply been overall the best rookie defender the entire year. Now, I don't know how many interceptions that he has, but I know he has been a pretty solid shutdown corner for the Eagles.
Well, and he's had to step in because Darius Slay has been having some injury issues, so he's not always there. And so Quinyon Mitchell was very quickly thrust into that number one starting role, and he has filled it very well.
Yes.
You know, the Eagles focused heavily on their secondary in this last draft. They also brought in Cooper DeJean, who's sort of flown under the radar a little bit more, not as impressive, but yeah.
But he was a
Quinyon
second
Mitchell,
round pick as well, so
right. He has done some special things, and it's looking like if the Eagles have to move on from a guy like Darius Slay, they're
going to be in a good position.
A solid dude in Mitchell to fill that role.
Yeah. Our offensive player of the year, it has to go to one guy and one guy only at this point. It's the king. It's Derrick Henry. He's looking like the Derrick Henry of old. He's making Lamar Jackson look like an MVP, and he's really making that offense run at a way that we haven't really seen an offense really be utilized before. And he could very easily get to 2,000 rushing yards this season. I would not be shocked by that in the slightest. He is just a man on a mission. 100% offensive player of the year. I don't think it's close.
No, easily. I mean, he's the Christian McCaffrey of this year. He has gotten a touchdown in every single game this season.
Yep.
He is already well over 1,000 yards. The only thing that might stop him from hitting that 2,000 mark is all the divisional matchups he still has yet to play, because so far, playing against division rivals, he has not gone over 100 yards.
Yes. Yeah, and it's... But
those are the only games. Every other game, he's well over 100 yards. He's getting a touchdown. At this point in time, Derrick Henry is the offensive player of the year.
Yeah, he has to be. Defensive player of the year. Now, going into this year, this was not a guy that either of us thought we would necessarily be talking about. But Sexy Dexy, Dexter Lawrence for the New York Giants, is playing better than anyone else. Like, we always knew he was a top 3, top 5 defensive tackle in the NFL. But he basically saw Aaron Donald retire this year, and he was like, okay, my job. No one else. This is mine. Everyone just bow down to me. I'm going to be the Aaron Donald of this league. And we always looked at it for that Giants defense going, oh, they have Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns. That's going to be their major sack getters. And Dexter Lawrence, he's going to probably get, like 6, 7. He might get to double digits at the end of the year. This dude is unblockable.
Well, and I think that a large part of that is because teams have to focus so much on Thibodeau and Burns that you can't double team Dexter Lawrence, but you need to. He's a big bruising guy. Currently, he's leading the league with 9 sacks, and so he's definitely hitting that double digits. And really, this Giants defense and Dexter Lawrence are the only thing that have been holding the Giants in a lot of these games.
100%. And this is one of those ones where when I initially sent my list to you, I thought I might have to fight you a little bit on this one, but you immediately were like, yeah, I have to agree. It's Dexter Lawrence. Like it's at this current moment, it is so clearly Dexter Lawrence for Defensive Player of the Year. Like, again, last year we had the argument, should have been TJ, should it have been Max, and then ultimately it was not either of them, and we're like, what the fuck? Like, Myles
Right.
Garrett does not deserve to win that award last year. Should have been Max Crosby or TJ Watt, but right now both of us, we're lockstep. There's no disagreement. There's no argument here. It's sexy Dexy.
It is 100% right now.
Comeback Player of the Year. There's a lot of different guys that could be up for this award. Aaron Rodgers, we could have Kirk Cousins. Ultimately, it's Joe Burrow. It is 100% Joe Burrow. And like he's playing like the MVP of the league right now. He really is. And we'll get to that discussion, but he 100% deserves this Comeback Player of the Year.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's 100% the guy. I think Kirk Cousins is a close second for this award right now. Depending on how the rest of this year shakes out, I think it could be either one of them. Aaron Rodgers definitely will not be getting it simply because he just has not performed well enough. But the things that both of these guys have been doing, Joe Burrow's been putting up a lot of good stats while losing, and Kirk Cousins has been not doing a whole lot, but winning.
Yep.
And so either one of these guys, I think, could be there. I think Joe Burrow, just with what he's been doing on the field in those losing efforts, is ultimately why he right now is the front runner for that Comeback Player of the Year.
Yep. And Coach of the Year, it's Dan Quinn. There's no one else here at the moment. Again, when you are one of those coaches that wins year in, year out, you have to have a pretty special season to get Coach of the Year qualifications or kind of nods. And so you're not ever really going to see the Andy Reids, or in the past, like the Bill Belichick. So pretty much it's like the Andy Reids, the Dan Campbells. You're not going to see those guys too often anymore because these are the expectations. Dan Quinn came into a team that everyone said was going to be another bottom 5 team this year with a rookie quarterback that was going to get absolutely murdered. And they are one of the teams that we think could potentially be a team that is going to make it to the NFC Championship game. And so Dan Quinn, he 100% deserves all the right to be Coach of the Year this year, even though I don't think it's him.
Yeah, no, at this point in time, it is 100% him. Unless this Commanders team has a significant drop-off in the back half of the year, he will be walking away with the Coach of the Year award for sure.
And now the one that everyone is here for, and the one that you and I we're taking off the pants, we're having the full bare naked brawl, the MVP award. Now, when I sent this list, I knew you were going to disagree with me on the MVP award. I chose Joe Burrow. Who are you choosing for MVP?
Lamar. At this point, it's Lamar Jackson, because Joe Burrow is wrong.
Joe Burrow is not wrong. Joe Burrow should 100% be the MVP of the league.
No.
My reasoning behind Joe Burrow being the MVP of the league is Joe Burrow has better numbers than Lamar Jackson. And he is doing that. He does, though. The only number that he doesn't have better numbers in is the interceptions, and he only has 2 more.
But it's barely. They have the same number of touchdowns. Lamar Jackson has 2 fewer interceptions, and Joe Burrow has 3 passing yards more than Lamar Jackson. 3.
Okay, so they're virtually identical. But
they're identical, except one is on a team that has a horribly losing record, and the other is on a team that is on trajectory to be in the AFC Championship.
My point here being is that Joe Burrow, if the Bengals did not have Joe Burrow, the Bengals wouldn't have a win this year. They would be 0 and whatever their record should be. And the MVP is a quarterback award. Like I don't think we'll ever see it. I don't know who the player will see get an MVP award that's not a quarterback. It's the most valuable quarterback award, essentially what it is. And the most valuable player to me is the team that, if you take that player away from that team, how bad does that team become? You take Lamar Jackson away from the Ravens, they're not a great team. They struggle. You take away Joe Burrow from the Bengals, they are winless. They are destroyed. They will not do anything. And I completely understand the argument of you can't give the MVP award to a non-playoff team, and I think that's insane. I think you can without a doubt do that. And one of the arguments I said to you is that if Joe Burrow goes over 4,500 passing yards and over 40 TDs, and let's say he has less than 10 interceptions, he should win it regardless of the team's record because he's doing that on the team. And here's the other caveat that I have with the interceptions. Lamar Jackson has thrown 2 interceptions. How many times has his team been down and you're having to put Lamar Jackson in situations of where he's being put pressured on to go out there and get big time plays and throwing?
No, I get that. I get that Joe Burrow's in a worse situation. But even if he gets to the end of the season and has 40 plus TDs and 4,500 yards, if Lamar Jackson also has that, then he should still be the MVP because he's going to be on the bet. He's winning games. Joe Burrow, great, you're putting up a lot of yards, but you don't win. That doesn't matter. At this point, Joe Burrow isn't even top 3 for MVP.
That's
Jared Goff.
insane. Jared Goff doesn't even have the numbers comparable to Joe Burrow. Like
No,
you
but
and I talked about this when we were
Yep.
texting, and you brought up both Josh Allen and Jared Goff. I
Yep.
looked at that and I went, neither of those guys should be even close to sniffing between these two guys. The only other quarterback that I would say you could even put in the conversation for MVP is Baker Mayfield. You look at Jared Goff's numbers. He is doing great in terms of the income or the completion rate. That is a record that is going to be massive, but the touchdowns aren't there and the passing numbers aren't there. Josh Allen is massively down in the passing yards and the passing touchdowns, but he doesn't have the interceptions. I agree with you in those terms, and yes, they're winning, but they are not for the numbers from what Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson. This is an argument between Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. That is where the argument is. And
It's not, because Joe Burrow is not even top 3. He's not. Yes, great. He's got lots of yards. Jared Goff is above him for that perfection level. He's nearly perfect at this point in the season. He is doing everything right. Drew Brees won an MVP solely based on the fact that he had the best completion percentage. Like, there's a reason the league does not give MVP awards to players that don't make the playoffs, because great, you're the most valuable to your team. You're not the most valuable to this league because you're not making any revenue or any ratings after January, after December at that point. Like, it's not going to happen. Only twice in NFL history has the MVP been given to a player that was on a team that did not make the playoffs. And in those situations, we have the first time it happened was Johnny Unitas in 1967 with the Baltimore Colts on a team that had a record of 11, 1, and 2.
Mhm.
So
no,
you
like
extrapolate that to current football, that's
he's
a playoff team.
No, I 100%
Right?
agree with you. Drew Brees never won an MVP.
Even that, though, that was still controversial because Roman Gabriel that year arguably had better stats than Johnny Unitas. And they chose the MVP before the end of the season all the way back then.
Yep.
And in that final game, Roman Gabriel absolutely destroyed Johnny Unitas, with the Rams beating the Colts. And it was one of those situations, you look back on it now, and there's a lot of people that think Johnny Unitas shouldn't have won the MVP that year. It should have been Roman Gabriel.
Listen, like I 100% agree with you. And if Joe Burrow and the Bengals don't make the playoffs, it's going to be a hard stretch. But I'm going to go back to the situation of talking about Jared Goff and the passing completion. Drew Brees never won an MVP.
Drew Brees didn't?
No.
Oh, I thought he did.
Drew Brees never won an MVP. And in that season, like he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons above 70 completion percentage, and the year that he had the 77.4, he threw for less than 4,000 yards. He threw for 32 TDs and 5 interceptions. He wasn't an MVP that year. So Jared Goff, with the lack of numbers, I simply have to say, yeah, his completion percentage is insane. If he had 85% completion percentage going into the final portion of the year, if the numbers aren't there for the touchdowns and the yards, you can't give it. And like I said, this year is solely Joe Burrow versus Lamar Jackson.
Well, and even if it is, Joe Burrow, he has to break records if his team doesn't make playoffs in order to get that. Because the only other time that somebody from a team that didn't make the playoffs was 1973. O.J. Simpson got the MVP award. There was nobody else good in the league that year to begin with, and O.J. Simpson broke the single season rushing record going over 2,000 yards, and he got it. And that's just it. Even then, that Bills team was 9-5. They only missed the playoffs because the Dolphins were I believe 10-2, and the Steelers beat them in the wild card with a 10-win team as well. And so that's another one. You extrapolate that to current day, that Bills team is a playoff team.
Yeah.
And hands down, the only thing that matters is if Joe Burrow does not will his Bengals to the playoffs, he does not win the MVP. If they make it in that seventh wild card spot, then yes, Joe Burrow will be the MVP. But if they do not make the playoffs, the only way he gets that MVP is if he breaks the single season passing record and breaks the single season touchdown record, which could happen. I'll give you that. That could happen. But that's the only situation where he's there. Right now, he is not the front runner for it because those are such long odds. You're asking him to find 3 unicorns before the end of the season in order to get the MVP award. It's not going to happen. Right now, Lamar Jackson is that guy. Because yes, you said Derrick Henry is making him look like an MVP.
He is.
But him being there is helping him elevate to that MVP level. Because you look at the games where Derrick Henry can't be as productive. Who wins that game? Lamar Jackson wins those games because he's able to throw for 5 touchdowns and
I'm not
300+
disagreeing that Lamar Jackson is having a special year, but what I am saying is that the talent and the situation that Lamar Jackson is in, his team is not currently being down. Joe Burrow is doing this while he's having to will his team to a victory. And even then, like, again, you look at the game on Thursday night, the Bengals should have won that game if there wasn't for missed calls. But it's one of those things where Joe Burrow is doing stuff you just can't comprehend. And Lamar Jackson, yeah, he's keeping pace, but do you seriously think Lamar Jackson is going to be able to keep this pace the rest of the year?
No, but I don't think Joe Burrow will either. Here's the other thing with Joe Burrow. Great, you take him away from that team, they have 0 wins. You take Jamar Chase away from Joe Burrow, his numbers are half of what they are right now.
Yeah, but that's all
because
Joe Burrow
he has nothing else. He has nobody else. That's
and his
it.
numbers
That's
are
why
still
he has
crazy.
to throw 3 touchdowns to Jamar Chase and hit him for over 200 yards. Without that, he has nothing there. So the argument could be made too, Jamar Chase maybe should be the MVP because he makes that team better. He is the most valuable thing. Without him, Joe Burrow doesn't look like he does. That's the thing. Whereas Lamar Jackson, he doesn't have any superstars to throw the ball to, and he's still putting those yards up. Yeah, he's got Derrick Henry to draw some of the defense, so he's not getting rushed as heavily as he has in past years. That is allowing him to be a quarterback instead of scrambling for his life. That's the only difference. We're getting to see Lamar Jackson as a quarterback because he doesn't have to run for his life back there because Derrick Henry is drawing that extra pressure away. He's throwing it to guys that are not even top 15 receivers or tight ends in the league. And so he's putting up the same amount of stats as Joe Burrow without having a top 3 guy. Because Joe Burrow has a top 3 wide receiver in the league. Easily.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. But you look at the running game. The Bengals don't have a running game.
No.
So he doesn't have that situation to set up.
That's not Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow's fault. That's the team around them. You're on a trash
I agree.
team. We've seen trash teams throughout history that have a phenomenal guy at quarterback that is putting up great yards, and it's like, yeah, but they only won 4 games because everything else on this team is absolute trash. It's dog water. And so we're not going to give him the MVP just because he's so good. We're not doing it. And that's what's going to happen this year. Unless Joe Burrow can find a way to will that Bengals team into a playoff position, he will not be even in the top 3 voting for MVP.
I will say this. I do think Lamar Jackson is the front runner for MVP. I don't agree and think that he should be for a lot of the reasons that I said. But to say that Joe Burrow is not going to be in the top 3, it to me like I that to me is I think where we are the most far apart because again, sure the team isn't winning, but again, what he is doing is just simply special. And again, I don't think Lamar Jackson is going to be able to keep this pace for the rest of the year. I think going into that NFC North is going to show a little bit more of Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson does have the rushing numbers that Joe Burrow doesn't have on top of that. So yeah, you and I are not disagreeing on that. I just look at it, I go, I do believe Joe Burrow is going to be able to keep pace with this, and if Lamar Jackson has, let's say, 35 passing touchdowns, and let's say at the end of the year he has 6 interceptions, and let's just say he goes for 800 rushing yards and he adds maybe 4 or 5 total TDs on the year in terms of the rushing game, but Joe Burrow has 4,500, 41 TDs and 8 interceptions, and he takes that team to just shy of a playoff spot. I would have to make that argument and go, man, like, yeah, Lamar Jackson was great and he has these great numbers, but like this is this is an MVP level year from Joe Burrow when the team around him is so bad.
Yeah, it might be MVP level, but it's not going to happen. That's the thing. If they don't make the playoffs, that's not going to happen. Christian McCaffrey had an MVP level season last year and didn't get it.
We both agree that Lamar Jackson should not have won the MVP award last year.
Agreed. He shouldn't have. But this year, he looks more like an MVP than he did last year.
100%.
Like head and shoulders more.
100%. You're not going to get a disagreement on that.
No, and we'll take the Jared Goff argument out of that. Fine, but like Josh Allen still has less weapons and is doing great things. When you look at the run game, his passing yards aren't there, but he has no weapons. That's just it. Like, you say you take Joe Burrow away from the Bengals and this team has 0 losses. I still say you take Jamar Chase away from this Bengals team, they have maybe 1 win.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, maybe. And so that's just it. He's not the most valuable player on his team. The 2 of them, if it was a duo award, if it was 2 guys, it's like this is the best duo, then yes, they would get the MVP. But the problem is you take either one of them away from the team and that team is even more trash than it already is.
Yeah. But it's pretty much like, again, I agree with you. I think if you take away Jamar Chase, I still think Joe Burrow has pretty good numbers. Are they as good as what they are right now? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. Like, Jamar Chase is a top 3 guy without a doubt. Again, yep. I don't agree with Josh Allen being ahead of Joe Burrow. I think I'm at this point where I'm fine to say Lamar Jackson, and I'm arguing that Joe Burrow needs to be considered, if not for second place, if not first place, he is guaranteed the second place guy.
And I mean,
to me, that is what my argument at this point is. I'm willing to concede that Lamar Jackson is that, but to say that the rest of the guys are ahead of Joe Burrow at this moment, and I can't agree with that. Like, Josh Allen, he's still playing very good, and we're seeing some of these less numbers, and he's got the 17-2, just shy or just a little over. He's actually at 2,001 passing yards, and he's playing really, really well. And we're talking about Josh Allen doing things that we've always asked him to do. But again, are you saying that you would take Josh Allen over Joe Burrow right now in terms of quarterback rankings?
If you take Lamar Jackson out of it, we reach the end of the season and Joe Burrow does not make the playoffs, then yeah, I give it to Josh Allen instead of Joe Burrow. I do. And the reason for that, because as well as I do, the NFL also will do that. The NFL will not give the award to a player who is not going to be playing playoff football. They won't do it. That's the only point where I'm trying to tell you that you're wrong, is if the Bengals were sitting at 7-2 right now, then yes, I agree 100%. Joe Burrow is the front runner for the MVP if they're at 7-2, but they're not, because unfortunately the MVP award is not based purely on stats. It is also based on your team record. It always has been. The NFL does not want to give that award to somebody who's not making the playoffs, because they're not the most valuable player to the league. because that's what this award has become. It's not just MVP for your team. It is MVP for the league.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I did just get some news that Dak Prescott is now out for the rest of the season for the Dallas Cowboys. He is having season-ending surgery.
A cowboyectomy.
Yep, it is. It is
He's like, I signed a contract. Please surgically remove this contract from me.
pretty
I don't
much.
want to be here for 5 more years. We fucking suck, as he said.
Yeah, yeah. So I figured I should break that news because again, we're just kind of spinning our tires here at the moment. And
I knew we would. We knew we would on this
yeah,
because this was one where I could not agree with you and I could not let it go because I know we both know the way this league works. As
Yep.
much as you love Joe Burrow,
and he should be the
my
MVP.
issue was it felt a little too fanboy because
I will not
taking...
say this is a fanboy thing. I will completely say the way that
Yep.
Joe Burrow is playing. If you take that and put that on, again, let's just say they were 5-4 instead of being 4-5. If they were 5-4 at the moment, Joe, you wouldn't be having this argument with me. So it pretty
5-4 and sitting in the wild card spot, yes,
Yeah.
then he would be right there,
the front runner for the MVP.
front runner. I mean, I would still be putting him alongside Lamar Jackson because they have identical numbers.
Okay,
with Lamar Jackson having the rushing.
Let's state at this point, instead of being the front runner, he's in strong consideration. But again, they're 4-5.
Yes.
There's nothing to say that they won't be a playoff team.
They're 4-6.
4-6. Yes, you are
Yeah.
correct. But again, regardless of that point, if we just reverse that and being 6-4,
Yep.
it's
But, I
a
mean,
very different discussion.
It
And
is,
there's
but, I
nothing to
mean,
say that they won't. Again, we talk about Joe Burrow and the Bengals at the end of this season. As long as Joe Burrow stays healthy, the chances of them winning are high.
Well, as long as both of them stay healthy. And that's just it. We talk about that all the time. It's always what if.
Yep.
Yeah, the Bengals definitely, the 4-6, they could easily finish this season at 11-6 and be a playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
They could also easily finish this season at 6-11 or 4-13 and be a absolute dog water team because they don't have an easy schedule coming up either.
Nope.
And their defense is bad. You know, that's just it. Like, we don't have to like the way the league chooses these awards, and we don't oftentimes, because we've made the arguments in years past where, just like we are right now, when it's the most valuable player, you take this guy off of your team and your team has won 0 games. I've made that argument before of, okay, you take TJ Watt away from the Steelers, they win 0 games, which means by that logic, TJ Watt should be the MVP. You know what I mean?
I've made the argument for Trent Williams to be the MVP of the league probably the last 4 years in a row.
Right?
No, you and I are in full lockstep agreement on this. It's a bullshit award that it's basically just who is the most valuable quarterback. And again, if we talk about who's the most valuable quarterback to their team, it's Patrick Mahomes, and then ergo Patrick Mahomes. And so, but yeah,
exactly.
We've had the argument. We're just spinning our wheels at this point.
No, I get it, but I mean, it was still fun, right?
Oh,
you know, I'm hoping people are still watching because it was. It just, I knew this was gonna have to get heated because I could not let that one go.
Yeah, and again, at this point, I still think Joe Burrow should be the MVP of the league simply because we're seeing, and I can concede the, you know, Lamar Jackson going above. You add in the rushing, I get that. We all know my, you know, issue with the adding the rushing tally to the quarterback, and the biggest reason why I've been a Lamar Jackson disbeliever is because in the big games we've seen Lamar Jackson not be able to do it, and I think he's one of the most gifted specialists and playmakers in the league. But when it comes to quarterback, we've discussed all of that many times before.
You know what we could still see though? We could both be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. We talked about a guy earlier about offensive player of the year. We could still see Derrick Henry top 2,500 yards.
Oh,
top 20 touchdowns. If he does that,
He
then
has to
all
be
of
the
the
MVP.
discussion was for naught because that dude should then be the MVP at that point.
Yeah, at this
And
point,
that's the toughest thing about doing a mid-season award is because there's still so many what ifs to come.
exactly.
And that's, I think, why it gets so heated when we do this in the
For
middle
me,
of the season.
I had 3 guys listed as my MVP favorites. Again, I had Joe Burrow at 1, I had Lamar Jackson at 2, and I had Derrick Henry at 3 because I simply think at this point, and if we would have done this 2 weeks ago, I would have had Derrick Henry at 1, I would have had Lamar Jackson at 2, and I would have had Joe Burrow at 3, just simply 2 weeks ago. And
Yeah.
I just continue to look at that and I go, Derrick Henry, and I've said it time and time again, Derrick Henry is making Lamar Jackson a true high level MVP guy. You take you take Derrick Henry away from this team, Lamar Jackson is just simply doing the things that he did last year. And we both agree that that MVP award was horseshit for Lamar Jackson last year.
That's the argument we've made about all three of these guys, really, because same thing. You take Lamar Jackson away from Derrick Henry, and he's putting up the same sort of numbers he's been putting up at Tennessee without a quarterback. Because having Lamar Jackson there has made it easy for him to run the way he likes to. And so
I think
Right?
I think Derrick Henry is the only guy that we talked about out of those 3 guys that if you take away Lamar Jackson or you take away some of the other stuff, because we've seen Derrick Henry have these 2,000-yard seasons. And he's without a doubt, but the only other thing is we haven't seen it in a while, but that's because of the teams that he's been on. If you take away Lamar Jackson from this Baltimore Ravens team this year and still have Derrick Henry on the Baltimore Ravens, are we seeing the numbers as good as what we would have normally seen? No, but I still think Derrick Henry is over 1,000 yards. He's still the focal point. Like if Lamar Jackson got hurt in preseason, I still think we would see Derrick Henry putting up borderline MVP numbers.
I think he'd be putting close, but I don't think we'd be talking about it at all because I think the Ravens would be sitting with a 3 or 4 win record at that point, and I'd be going, well, they're a losing team. He won't be in the MVP discussion.
Yep. But that is going to do it for this week. Hopefully you all enjoyed our little bit of anger at each other. We don't typically have a lot of these situations, but when we do, boy, do we like to yell at each other. But then we'll kiss and make up off camera anyways. And so, you know, you have to pay a lot more money to watch that content. But for Sterling, I'm Brendan saying thank you all very much for watching. Peace.